Could $1 billion buy the White House?
Well, I don't
money
think it can.
It cost me billions of dollars to become president.
You know how this goes, Donald. You've done it yourself. But you're struggling.
Reports confirm that he's losing big time in the money game.
The Trump campaign squandered its $200 million cash advantage over Joe Biden.
They spent all your money.
The campaign has already had to cancel events this week.
All those consultants and pollsters, all those ads. None of it's working. They're getting rich, but you're getting ripped off.
So an enormous share of the money was just sunk into the act of raising the money.
Falling behind in the polls.
Margin here, Joe Biden consistently is ahead.
A 10-point lead, a double-digit lead for Joe Biden.
Joe Biden with a lead over President Trump.
All that money for nothing. You're paying for failure, and now it's your money they're blowing.
I'm really rich. Much more money than we had last time, double and triple.
Can you imagine if I lost to him?
The Lincoln Project is responsible for the content of this advertising.
In this edition of Campaign Countdown, we will learn more about Proposition 113. Congressional Candidate Jillian Freeland talks about our medical system. An excerpt from Keith Baker's town hall meeting, and we will find out a little more about the Nestleave movement and close with a few of the best words from Donald Trump. This is Campaign Countdown.
Hi, my name is Kate Shea, and I live in Buena Vista, Colorado. I'm here today to urge you to vote yes on Proposition 113, the national popular vote, to ensure that every vote is counted equally. The national popular vote guarantees the presidency to the candidate who earns the most votes in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. During the 2019 legislative session, the Colorado legislature passed, and Governor Polis signed into law, the national popular vote. Colorado joined 14 other states and the District of Columbia, together totaling 196 electoral votes in passing the national popular vote. The national popular vote will go into effect when enacted by states possessing a majority of electoral votes, or at least 270 of the 538 votes. Those states would then award all of their electoral votes to the candidate who earns the most votes in all 50 states and D.C. On November 3rd, Colorado voters will be asked to approve the decision by the legislature to pass the national popular vote with Proposition 113. A yes vote on Proposition 113 supports the national popular vote. Personally, I support the national popular vote because I think every voter should have their vote counted equally regardless of where they live. Two of the last three presidents lost the national popular vote and yet became president anyway, and that's just not right. I believe that electing the president by national popular vote strengthens our democracy. Robust voter participation is good for our country. Data show that when citizens feel that their vote matters, they vote in greater numbers. Presidential elections in swing states, for example, have much higher voter turnout than in those states where the electoral outcome is reliably red or blue. Voter participation also increases in down-ballot races in swing states, and that's also good for our country. The national popular vote will incentivize candidates to campaign in all 50 states, not just the swing states. The candidates would need to develop policies that benefit us all, as opposed to just the interests of the swing state voters. Electing the presidential candidate who earns the most votes in all 50 states is more fair, more democratic, and just plain makes more sense than our current electoral college system. I urge you to vote yes on November 3rd on Proposition 113. Thank you very much.
My experience working in the healthcare field taught me a lot that can benefit you. Americans pay more for health care than any other developed nation, and our system is designed with some major roadblocks. After we pay thousands of dollars in premiums, we still have to meet deductibles, make co-pays, pay sky-high prescription costs, and make sure that our doctor is in the right network. This forces Americans to ration their medicine and to put off our health care until we're so sick we land in the emergency room. Right here in Colorado Springs, we have veterans waiting on insanely long lists to get help for injuries that they sustained serving our country. And we've made it so difficult to get mental health care and addiction treatment that our prison system has become the #1 provider. And we have more people dying of overdose than any other developed country. Streamlining the system and removing these roadblocks will make America healthier and happier. So help me flip the fifth. Go to JillianFreeland.com to donate and volunteer. I'm Jillian Freeland, and I approve this message.
Zoom Town Hall. I've done a lot of Zoom meetings lately, as most of you have, but this is my first town hall. I'm Keith Baker. I'm currently serving as Chaffee County Commissioner from District 1. And I didn't say representing District 1 because even though I live in District 1, as I have explained on one of my earlier videos, which is on my YouTube channel, I represent all of Chaffee County. I represent every Chaffee County resident. And the reason that we have districts is for geographic dispersal, or to make sure that the commissioners are spread around the county. Because it's conceivable, if you didn't have those provisions, that all 3 commissioners could live on the same block in Salida or Buena Vista or somewhere else, and we don't want that. So that's why we have the 3 districts, and they're apportioned basically by population. And District 1 is up here on the north end, the northern tier, as I call it, and then District 2 is generally the central part of the county and ducks down on the southern side of Salida, and then District 3 is primarily Salida proper. And it has, because Salida has so much more population, that's why geographically District 3 is small. But I digress. So let me give you a bit of a roadmap of what we're going to do tonight. I'll talk a little bit, a few minutes about some things about my philosophy and vision, what some people call priorities. And I try to steer away from the term priorities when it comes to commissioner business, and I'll explain why. And talk a little bit about some accomplishments that our team has made during this term, and then kind of forecast what I'm looking after or looking out to in a second term. And then we'll get to some of your questions, and those you can submit via the chat function. If you don't know how to use Zoom chat, I can explain it briefly depending on what kind of machine you're on. If you're on a workstation or a laptop, you can probably scroll down to the bottom of your Zoom view and you'll see where it says chat. Select on that, it'll open a window up, and then you can just kind of follow your nose from that. If you're on an iPad or another tablet, your presentation, you may have to go up to the upper right hand corner and select 3 dots there, and then it will probably give you a menu, which chat will be one of those. And so that's the way I'll be happy to take your questions. The only questions that are off limits, because there are some, I will not comment or give you my opinion or tell you how I am going to vote on anything that's going to be on the ballot in November. And that includes state propositions, amendments, and so forth. Those are things that are not going to come before the county commissioners, or if they do, if someone does bring them to the county commissioners asking us to endorse them or to pass a resolution opposing them, then that's a corporate decision that we will all make together, and I don't want to color that in any way at this point. Otherwise, those are private decisions for me as a voter, and I will make them over at that kitchen table right over there, just the same as you will in the privacy of your own home. Second thing, I can't discuss any pending applications before the Board of Commissioners or that might come before the Board of Commissioners. And I think we all know what some of those might be. Primarily land use decisions and things of that nature. Those are quasi-judicial processes, and I can't, because of due process considerations and ex parte communications considerations, I can't comment on those. Otherwise, I'm fair game. I'm all yours till 8 o'clock. If we get finished before 8, we'll finish up, but we won't go past 8 because I know we're all busy. So I think that is just about all my preambular comments before my other comments, so I will get on into those. And if you do have any questions or anything, please don't hesitate to ask via chat about procedural questions. You know, one thing that people have been mentioning to me recently about why they are supporting me or why they're going to vote for me is because they like the composition of the current Board of Commissioners and how we work together, and that they think there is a good balance of viewpoints, a good balance of party representation amongst the commissioners, and they value that and they want to keep that. And I can certainly understand why. Now, I will say that personally, I really wish that at the commissioner level, elections weren't partisan. I've lived in states, one of the benefits of a Navy career is you live lots of places. I've lived in states where up until you got to the state legislature level, all races were nonpartisan. Now you had an idea, and people do belong to parties, but it didn't get into this party versus party angst sort of situations that we see sometimes. And so consequently, I really don't think, and you've seen some letters to the editor that your fellow citizens and residents feel the same way. They really don't think that party matters that much in local elections. And I feel the same way. So we've got a good team, and we're working well together, so why unbalance that? Now, people ask me, well, what are your priorities sometimes? Well, I don't like...
Michigan, a state surrounded by water, is drowning in controversy. For years, Nestle, the world's largest food and beverage company, has bottled Michigan's water for next to nothing and sold it at great profit. Now, the state has greenlit the company's request to pump even more, despite widespread opposition. And all Nestle has to pay for these millions of gallons of water it gets a year is $200. And this in a territory where Native American tribes have treaty rights.
There is a perception around the world that Nestle goes into poor communities with lax regulations, entices them with the promise of jobs, and then takes their water, sells it back to them at a profit.
We have to go where the water's at.
What do you think Nestle should do?
Go home to Switzerland.
We're walking up to see the White Pine Springs well, where Nestle pumps 250 gallons of water a minute that it bottles under its Ice Mountain brand. Despite massive opposition, Michigan has just approved Nestle's request to increase that amount to 400 gallons of water a minute. And all Nestle has to pay for these millions of gallons of water it gets a year is $200, which locals here are furious about. John McLean has worked as a surveyor in this area for over 30 years. He and Peggy Case are members of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation, an organization that's been fighting Nestle for nearly 2 decades.
So we're looking at Nestle's well over there.
That's Nestle's White Spring well.
And it's fenced off because obviously we cannot even get close to it.
You can get within 20 feet.
Since 2005, Nestle has extracted more than 3.4 billion gallons of water from Michigan. The state doesn't charge extraction fees for water like it does for oil and gas. And because Nestle owns this land, the company can take as much water as it wants for a $200 a year permit fee, if there's no harm to the environment. But locals here say the damage is clear.
Well, this is supposed to be the headwaters of Chippewa Creek.
Where it starts.
Where this creek begins. According to Nestle, there should be water here. Don't see much.
In order to grant Nestle's request to pump 400 gallons per minute, the state required the company to run its plan through a computer model, which determined there would be an adverse impact on the environment. But Michigan's Department of Environmental Quality, or DEQ, overruled those findings and instead relied on data provided by Nestle to push the permit through. The final hurdle was a public comment period, during which the DEQ was flooded with more than 80,000 comments against Nestle's request and only 75 in favor. But they approved it anyway.
Why are you opposed to what Nestle's doing here?
Well, we're opposed to bottled water, and we're opposed to privatizing water. They're taking the water, putting it in plastic bottles, selling it outside of the watershed, and making a huge profit off of water that doesn't belong to them. The water belongs to the people.
Locals we spoke to accuse Nestle of trying to cover up traces of environmental damage by offering to replace local infrastructure, like this culvert, where water markings show how levels have dropped significantly over time.
So the water used to be up that high, now it's this low?
2 feet higher.
Okay.
Which would have placed it up above the stones here.
So you guys, Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation, made noise about how you can tell the water has gone down, and right away they offered to replace the structures?
At the next public meeting, they made that offer.
Do you want them to do that?
No.
Why?
Because it would destroy this evidence here.
The fight for resources in this region goes back centuries. Desmond Barry is a tribal citizen of the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. A treaty dating back to 1836 gives the tribe rights to the land and water in this area. The tribe spent more than a year lobbying the DEQ against Nestleave.
Our treaty rights are under threat by Nestleave, a corporation that proposes to withdraw groundwater at unprecedented levels, which will have an effect upon surface waters within our treaty-ceded territory, where our way of life is dependent upon access to those treaty-reserved resources, such as fisheries, such as wildlife, plants, animals.
Have you seen that happen so far?
And we've seen that happen in this area. Where we're standing right now, we should probably be in knee-deep water, and we're not.
And who's at fault for that?
Nestleave's at fault for that because about 2,000 yards behind us is their well.
Nestleave operates several well fields across Osceola and Mecosta counties, including the White Pine Springs well. Opponents say the surface waters of the two local creeks and river are suffering as a result. The water Nestleave extracts gets pumped to the small town of Everett and then trucked to the Ice Mountain factory in Stanwood, where it's bottled and sold all over the Midwest. For years, critics have accused the company of exploiting lax water laws in economically depressed areas.
Jobs. That's what this tiny town of Everett had hoped for. More than 44% of residents here live below the poverty line, but it's rich in water. And for over a decade, Nestleave has been purchasing a lot of that water from two of the town's municipal wells.
City manager Zachary Zakis credits Nestleave for saving his town.
How much water are they getting from this well?
500 gallons per minute.
And what are they paying for that?
$3.50 per thousand.
That sounds like a good deal for Nestleave.
It's a great deal, but you just got to think of everything that Nestleave has to do to get that water produced. They have to maintain this well. This well, to replace it, would be almost $1 million.
Well, $1 million, one could argue, is a drop in the bucket compared to their profits.
Oh, it
worldwide.
could be. It could be.
So what is in it for the city of Everett then?
The revenue we generate annually from them.
How much is that?
I just looked at the numbers for 2017. Basically, we generated $313,000.
Is that significant for a city like Everett?
Oh, it's major for a city like ours.
Despite hopes, Nestleave never built a factory in Everett. The few jobs that exist here are at the transfer station, where water pumped from wells gets trucked to the Ice Mountain plant in Stanwood, 40 minutes away. Instead, Nestleave helped finance things like new softball fields, a state fairground, and a new well.
Did Nestleave effectively buy out your town?
No, not at all. Where do you come up with that?
I mean, they
have not bought out our town. All they're doing is purchasing spring water from us. It's frustrating. We're not like puppets.
But Everett residents Marianne Borden and her daughter Rhonda feel differently.
Okay, they built new softball diamonds across the street from us, but we already had softball diamonds over at the fairgrounds. I mean, the things that they say they've given us, and maybe they're a little nicer, but we already had those things.
Marianne has lived in this home since 1953. Her two children grew up here, playing in this backyard creek. They claim they've witnessed noticeable changes since Nestleave came to town. What should be a cold water stream where trout thrive is now warmer, narrower, and more shallow.
So what do you think is going on?
Well, somebody is sucking the water out of my creek.
And who do you think that somebody is?
I think that somebody is Nestleave. And they'll say, well, you can't prove that. However, they are the only large corporation that is sucking water out of my stream by the millions of gallons that has moved into my township.
Nestleave agreed to speak to us at their Ice Mountain plant in Stanwood. In 2016, the company reportedly sold more than $343 million of Michigan water under its Ice Mountain and Pure Life labels. But that's just a fraction of its worldwide footprint. Headquartered in Switzerland, Nestleave has over 8,500 brands in at least 80 countries.
Arlene Anderson-Vincent is the Natural Resource Manager for Nestle Waters North America.
Why do you think there was so much local opposition to Nestle increasing its pumping there?
We have lots of strong partnerships with residents and local businesses and business leaders. I don't know if I'm not sure how much local opposition that there is.
Well, I'll give you an example. We filmed several people I spoke to who were standing on the side of the road and fishing trout, and we say, how's the fishing going? One man literally said, well, I don't catch as many thanks to Ice Mountain. What do you say to him?
The science just doesn't show that. Anyways, I also received lots of pictures of people saying, look at how healthy the trout streams are.
So you're not concerned that the area is being depleted at all by Nestle's pumping?
I'm not concerned that the area is being depleted.
There's genuine concern among locals who say once Nestle starts pumping to 400 gallons a minute, our ecosystem here will suffer. What do you say to those people?
The science does not show that. We are very confident in the science. We looked at it very conservatively. 400 gallons a minute is a very conservative number as to what that well could pump, and without negatively impacting any of the ecosystems. We study the ecosystems, we study the streams.
But Nestle's science relies on subcontractors the company hires itself.
Does Nestle believe that water is a fundamental human right?
Most definitely. It is a human right. It is most definitely a human right.
There is a perception around the world that Nestle goes into poor communities with lax regulations, entices them with the promise of jobs, and then takes their water, sells it back to them at a profit. How do you respond to that?
I can't speak to the perception per se, but from the science perspective, we have to go where the water's at. So a lot of times those are going to be more rural areas because that's where we have thick aquifers. It's not heavily industrialized. So that's where, from a science perspective, why we're in this area, why we're at White Pine Springs, and why we're in Stanwood.
In 2016, bottled water surpassed soda for the first time to become the #1 beverage in the U.S. Here in Michigan, just days after the state greenlit Nestle's request to pump more water, the governor announced Flint residents would no longer be receiving free bottled water. People we met in Flint called out the irony.
Tax Nestleave and give it to Flint. That's a slap in the face. That's all I ought to say. I mean, how would you feel if you had a $200 water bill and $1 billion company was getting $1 billion worth of product for free?
Despite public outcry, Nestle's presence in Michigan appears unstoppable.
In the ideal scenario, what do you think Nestle should do?
Go home to Switzerland. I'm serious. Go home. We don't want bottled water here. And we don't want corporations taking the water and turning it into a profit. Period.
Hey guys, it's Dina, and we did a lot of coverage of water problems for this season on Direct From Cape Town to Flint to the Nestle story here. Check out the Direct From playlist to catch all of those episodes and more. Be sure to like and share this video, comment on it, and subscribe to AJ+. I'll see you soon.
Thanks once again for joining us, folks. We will be back again Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And now, enjoy some of the very best words from Donald Trump.
Defeat the coronavirus, the coronavirus. Surgical gowns. We have no contingency plan. Administer convalescent plasma and cefahide. So that's 1,870,000 tests. To use the Defense Production Act and the Defense Production Act, hydroxychloroquine and hydroxychloroquine. Remdesivir. I thank them for their unwavering devotion, immense pride, and the selflessness. The bravery of our truck drivers, transfusing it into six patients very, very, very powerfully. So 6 patients. I am confident that by counting and continuing, taking action to suspend the internet. The internet made it so big. I'll show you some of the latest, just the data to the highest level of activists. I mean, if you take a look at peer no record since 1917, which was the Spanish flu. 1917, the pandemic, like nobody's seen since 1917. Opening up America, and we add the word again. I think we can add the word probably again.